Good day, fellow survivor, and welcome back to another episode of Hammer D20, the show that really does miss getting popcorn from Jumbo Video, as well as renting games and movies from Jumbo Video. My name is Steven Sobot, and I will be your guide. Today, we're going to focus on the world of films and the Hamilton Film Festival. See, Hamilton has become the hub of filming around here over the last few decades, although it feels like it may have started sometime around the 2000s. If we follow the city of Hamilton's list of films that have been filmed in Hamilton list, it states that the first film was filmed in 1983, the film being Strange Brew, a comedy starring and directed by Rick Moranis and Dave Thomas. Regardless, you hear about, road closures on certain streets due to filming. I think the more notable one that I remember a while back was around 2007, 2008, when they were filming The Incredible Hulk, starring Edward Norton, and they had closed parts of, I think it was Catherine Street, if not John Street, for the film's finale. Or even, if you go back even a little bit more, the Silent Hill film, starring Rhoda Mitchell and Sean Bean, opens up with the scene of the illuminated cross at Devil's Punch Bowl. And as they're kind of going through the city of Silent Hill, next thing you know, there's a shot of the Lister block. Since then, filming of Hamilton has become even more popular over the past and current decade. Partially because the city has been encouraging filmmakers to come to the city to use our locale, but also because Hamilton has a lot of variety of scenery. Most notably, Hamilton has the ability to give you a metropolitan setting, except because it's not as much of a metropolitan as, say, Toronto or Chicago or New York is, the whole city doesn't just get shut down and closed off and you can't drive anywhere if you were to shut down a small section of street like, say, Catherine Street. You can still get from point A to point B without too much trouble. In addition to that, you've got a lot of green space, you've got waterfalls, you've got an industrial sector, you've got a bayfront view, you've got the scenic view on the mountain, and you've got a lot of 19th century architecture that you can use. But filming in Hamilton has kind of started around 2 decades ago, really. And yet all these scenery elements have been in Hamilton for even longer. So what's the thing that really got people coming here? I'd say the main proprietor of such a thing was none other than Hamilton Film Festival's director, Nathan Fleet. As many of you know, Hamilton Film Festival is one of Canada's premier film festivals. Starting sometime around 20 years ago, the Hamilton Film Festival showcases films from all kinds of genres, lengths, and all parts of the world, as a matter of fact, from both emerging and professional filmmakers. So I spoke to Nathan about what the film festival is about, what's so special about this year, what they're kind of do about COVID looming around, and much, much more. Stephen, let's go give him a call. Thanks, Stephen. So Nathan, I guess the main question is, what is the Hamilton Film Festival?
Well, we are a local film festival that started off showing pretty much just local movies 16 years ago. And then we kind of turned into a regional film festival, I guess. And then once we went online, we really started to see a big spike in international movies coming through. So it's a film festival proper where you will see movies that you probably will never see again in the world because these are independently produced movies. It's very difficult for them to get exposure. The Hamilton Film Festival is also a place where people go to meet other filmmakers. It's a great networking opportunity. And then, in the recent years, probably about 5 years ago, we started to get into education. So the Hamilton Film Festival is also about film education for kids, teens, and adults. And also just, this year we're getting into production as well. So the Hamilton Film Festival will also be an active producer in content as well.
I kind of noticed there's a bit of like a theming with this. What is the theming of this film festival?
Yeah, this year our theme is coming of age. So we thought, we're turning 16 and it might seem like a long time for a film festival to be around, but really, we're just a teenager. So the theme is coming of age. Our tagline is Now We Can Drive. And the general thread throughout the festival will be that coming of age Sweet 16. If we can meet in person, we're going to have a great opening Sweet 16 birthday party, cheesy with all the balloons and whatever anyone wants to dress up like. Hopefully we can do that in person, but still the theme remains the same.
Perfect. Again, that kind of then brings it to a question that's always on everyone's mind, especially with this year, being as it's COVID. What kind of parameters or what kind of like things do you have set up to kind of deal with COVID? Like to, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So what we do is we follow the rules of the theaters that we rent. So we rent the theaters in Hamilton, and whatever their restrictions require, we follow their restrictions, and make sure that everybody's safe and that everybody's getting in and out properly and sanitizing and wearing their masks when they need to, because we pulled that off last year. In 2020, we had a 50-person capacity festival. We did it at the Playhouse Theater, we did it at the Westdale, and we were also at the Starlight Drive-In. So that worked out really well. So we're planning on that for this fall, and we'll have the online option as well, and Cable 14, right? Cable 14 last year gave us about 4 hours of broadcast time, and we definitely plan to use that again this year, because it's a great way for everybody to see it. Not everyone can actually get out to the theater, and someone might not feel safe about doing that.
Yeah, right. Like that can be kind of a bit daunting. Is it other than Cable 14? Are there ways to watch the films kind of after the festival?
No, what we do is we try to limit it to the duration of the festival. And the reason for that is an independent filmmaker is going from one film festival to another. So you kind of have to geo block or festival block them, so that after the festival's done, that filmmaker might be onto a new festival and they want to put their efforts that way. So, as a festival, it's kind of like doing a nice thing where you're not hogging the film for a long period of time. You get it for a set duration, and then another film festival will get the chance to bring an audience to their event.
I guess this is also even a question for someone at home watching, like if they can make a film for this.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do get some really high quality content that comes our way. And we also get that kind of low budget indie filmmaker vibe. Low budget indie filmmaker vibe can also be really high quality.
Yeah.
But like you said, like maybe a student or emerging filmmaker, we always make sure that we have room on our screens for those movies. So we'll have a program that's called Emerging Filmmaker, so that audiences watching understand that you're watching filmmakers in the process of learning their craft. It's important, like I said, we want to bring education into our film festival. It's important for other filmmakers to see how their movie translates on the big screen. An emerging film may not make it to the Westdale Theater screen. We might put that in the Staircase Theater, where we have about 60 people in, right? But we just want to make sure they can see it with an audience, so they know how the audience is reacting, how their movie looks when it's not on a little tiny screen. So it's important for us to have a student category and an emerging category.
Gotcha. That question like kind of comes also almost like a bit of a personal question myself, because sometimes I'd honestly love to participate, but sometimes I feel like I don't have the ability to kind of make an actual kind of studio project. I gotta just have a DSLR and kind of feel a little like, will I feel myself that I can't really make something? But okay, that's really good to know. That's for myself and obviously someone watching, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yourself right now as we're talking, I would encourage you to make something, or if you've already made something, that to take a chance on it, right? Because we also really favor local movies. We make sure that we have a decent amount of Hamilton content in our festival, because we want to earn the Hamilton in our title. We're not just called the Hamilton Film Festival because we're based here. We want to support the local industry, and DSLRs are great. I mean, you have a DSLR that shoots 4K now, right? Like you can do a lot of stuff. It comes down to the story. It really does. If you have a neat concept or an interesting idea, a great concept for a short documentary, even, DSLRs are perfect for that. Everybody, has access to these cameras, but not everyone has access to ideas. So it really comes down to that.
Perfect. Okay. We mentioned categories before. What are all the categories?
Even though we're themed as coming of age, we will show all genres of movies. So in terms of categories, we have like short, mid-length, and feature length. Those are the length categories, and then for genre categories, it's wide open. Whatever people have. If it's drama, we get a lot of great comedies, a lot of great short dramas. We get a lot of documentaries. Last year we had a lot of documentaries. It can be anything. Yeah, horror, sports theme, music theme, whatever people have, we're looking to show it at the film festival.
Perfect. What's gotten you interested in film yourself?
Yeah, that's I've always been interested in movies. 1977 changed it for me when New Hope came out, and I was a kid and I saw Star Wars, and I saw it, and I also had the soundtrack album. So the idea of music and movies was always a big interest to me. In my teen years, jumped headfirst into music. I played guitar 5 6 hours a day. That's all I wanted to do. Studied in through high school, Delta. Went to Delta and was in the jazz band, the concert band. There was a fusion band, whatever I could get my hands on. Then after college, I thought I wanted to get back into movie making, and I thought, well, I'm a musician now. Why didn't I get into film scoring? And I started asking around and applying for these jobs, and I couldn't get a job because I didn't have a demo. So I thought, why don't I just start making my own movies and scoring my own films? And that's how it happened. I just made a couple of shorts, had some clips with some of my own music to it, and that was it. And I started getting work, and realized that I actually love filmmaking as well. So I got into filmmaking. Not there wasn't anything in Hamilton at the time. Like this is like the late '90s. So I would get on a go bus and I'd go to Toronto. There's a place called LIFT, the Liaison of Independent Filmmakers of Toronto, and I studied there. Then in Hamilton, a place called the Factory Media Center had opened up, and they were doing just that. But I ended up being a teacher there because I already gained all these skills. So I was teaching workshops through the Factory Media Center. And then, there's a little place on Dundurn called the Staircase Theater that I stumbled on by accident back in the early 2000s, and they were showing movies. And I went in, and the owners were amazing. And I started helping out, taking tickets at the door. And they had these traveling film festivals. They had a local program called Lost and Underground that they showed some Super 8 movies. And I went to those programs, and I loved them.
Mm.
And the manager sat down with me at the time and said, well, why don't we start a proper film festival? And then I said, why don't we call it the Hamilton Film Festival? And that was it. That was kind of how it started. And that was at a time when, putting Hamilton in the title of something wasn't always the greatest, because there was still a negative attitude towards the city, that it was smelly and dirty, and we kind of owned it right away. We thought it's Hamilton Film Festival.
You mentioned A New Hope. Do you have another film that you would say is probably your top favorite film?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with a Canadian film here. It's called Going Down the Road.
Okay.
This is early '70s, pre-CN Tower, Toronto, about these couple of guys living in the East Coast, and they want to make it in Toronto. That's where all the jobs are going to be, and it's shot documentary style. It's wonderfully directed by a director named Donald Shabib, and it is just fantastic. It feels like a documentary. It's very real, and it had a big effect on me watching it. So I would recommend, if anyone has not seen Going Down the Road, to absolutely see it. I first saw it parodied on SCTV. That was my first. And then when I heard about the movie, I thought, oh, I remember seeing this on SCTV. So I actually saw the parody first. But yeah, that's probably one of my top 3 movies of all time. So I've got Star Wars up there. I've got Going Down the Road.
For, I guess, a prospective filmmaker, is there anything that they should kind of, like, if they were to make a film starting now, what should they kind of start doing if they wish to make it to the festival?
I definitely wouldn't put the focus just on Hamilton.
No.
So I always tell a filmmaker, do your genre analysis before you even make your movie. So if you're going to make a short horror movie, where do short horror movies play? Where's your audience? And that can kind of help determine what you're going to do with that movie. If you know that short horror movies in the 5 to 10 range do really, really well, then that's, maybe go for that range. So do a little bit of work in advance. You can go onto a place like Film Freeway, where you submit movies, and type in the keyword horror and find out how many horror film festivals are out there. If you're going to make an experimental film, do some research and see what film festivals are showing experimental movies. An hour and a half experimental film is going to be extremely difficult to program, because the audience may be limited for that. So you have to do your research on that. But a 5-minute experimental film might be fantastic. So kind of knowing your audience. So that's the filmmakers just getting ready. I want to make a movie and I want to submit it to film festivals. Definitely don't look just to ours because you want to go beyond that.
Mm.
The other bit of advice for filmmakers is to treat a film festival like you're getting a booth at a trade show. So if you had a booth at a trade show and you didn't show up, that would kind of be useless, right? People just walk on by.
Yeah.
So a film festival is really your ground, your place for networking and meeting people and showing people your work.
Perfect. Okay. Is there anything else that you'd like to mention before we kind of sign off?
Just that anytime anyone is interested in movie making, education, or eventually production, HamiltonFilmFestival.com is where we're going to have everything sitting, and all the information is there. And I'm always around, so I'm very easy to reach, and I'll answer any questions that anyone has.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time, Nathan. I appreciate you coming on.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you very much.
Okay. Back to you, Stephen. Before we move on to our next segment, let's take a short break. See you soon. Welcome back. So, like many of you, I love watching films with my friends. Prior to COVID, usually when I'd hang out with them, I'd play video games or have a drink or play a game of Magic. Or, more notably, probably watch a film or TV show with them that's pretty spicy. The thing is, even though we have a world of films to choose from, the films we would kind of gravitate to are weird, cheesy horror films, or films that are known to be so bad that in some way you can kind of find enjoyment out of them. Without irony, one of my favorite films to watch is Jason X, the 10th Friday the 13th film to come out that is set in like 400 years in the future, where Jason is cryogenically unfrozen, and then there's like weird dominatrix androids, and there's like a whole scene where they keep Jason in like a simulation where he's beating up these camp girls, like one within a sleeping bag and the other one in another sleeping bag. It's so stupid, and yet in some way it's so enjoyable to watch because there's just so much energy to it. It's hard to explain. So I contacted one of my close friends, George Lacatus, someone that I love watching these bad films with, about exactly this. What is it about this phenomenon of bad, good films does he find enjoyable? So, Stephen, let's give George a call. Thank you, Stephen. So, George, how are you doing? How's your life been treating you so far?
Hey, Stephen. Things are going well. Just living my best life.
Sick, excellent. And on Saturday, when we hung out, we watched Vampire's Kiss, right?
Yes.
And for those who don't know, Vampire's Kiss is a 1980s, like a black comedy, I guess. Like,
yeah.
It just feels like a really long episode of Tales from the Crypt. But most famously, is just like it stars Nicolas Cage, being like Nicolas Cage.
It is a vehicle for Nicolas Cage to go completely unhinged.
Exactly, right? And so, the film itself isn't great. Like, it's good, it's fun, it's entertainment. But
it's not going to be winning Academy Awards, but it is a fun movie.
Yeah, so I guess the one thing that I wanted to kind of cover is, like, why do we kind of have that appeal for that? Like,
so I feel like a lot of these movies, they're made, maybe the director or the starring actor, they have a very specific idea of what they think constitutes like good cinema, which it doesn't quite match like our expectations or the reality, or maybe sometimes they just do it because, you know, life is absurd, life is goofy, might as well have fun with being on screen. The other point I was going to mention was, I think there's also part of it is a lot of these bad but good movies, they're cult films. Like, not everybody will have heard of these, so there's sort of like a neat appeal of like being a fan of this thing that is obscure and not well known by your average person. And often a lot of the time, like, I think of Neil Breen or Tommy Wiseau.
Jim! How could you have done this? Jim! I can't believe you committed suicide. I cannot believe you committed suicide. How could you have done this? How could you have committed suicide?
I did not hit her. It's not true. It's both. I did not hit her. I did not. Oh, hi, Mark.
Oh, hey, Johnny, what's up?
I have a problem with Lisa. She said that I hit her.
What? Well, did you?
No, it's not true. Don't even ask.
There's a whole organic community that forms around these. Like the Room is a very quotable film. I'd say it's more quotable than any like Academy Award winner from the past 20, 30 years. Like
100%.
I love like The Departed. I love The Departed, but I could not quote one line from that movie. However, The Room, it's so quotable because it's so just so wacky that you can't help but fall in love with it. And there's a whole community that has sprung up organically around this. Like people go to screenings of this film. There's whole sorts of traditions. Like
Yeah.
on the set of The Room, like there's a lot of pictures of a spoon.
Yeah,
So people
yeah.
will take spoons with them, and when they see a picture of the spoon on screen, they'll throw spoons at the
the screen.
in the theater at the screen. These random traditions that have just again sprung up organically, and I think there's something really cool to be said about that.
Yeah, as us ourselves had gone to one of these screenings where exactly that, and I was kind of wondering, like, I was like, George's got a box of spoons. You're just like, yeah, like you throw the spoons at the screen. I was like, oh.
It's a great feeling to find one of these movies and to watch it on your own and have a laugh at it, because this movie is so ridiculous. But what's even better than that is sitting in a theater full of 100, 200 other like-minded individuals and this whole community. You can talk about your favorite moments from the film, and sometimes you'll even get to meet the director of the film. It's a much more homegrown, and these movies are rescued from obscurity by passionate fans. Otherwise, they would be sitting on IMDb completely forgotten.
That's like kind of the biggest thing about it, kind of a crime about media in some ways, because there's the idea that you can have a piece of media and like it could be actually fine, like a 6 out of 10, but that's actually probably worse than if the film was like a 2 out of 10 and is
just completely average. It's forgettable.
Exactly, right? W Channel is filled with tons of these films that are just these kind of romantic comedies that are based around Christmas. It's about somebody from the big city going to their hometown where they meet their middle school crush, where they something or rather, one of them's divorced, and they meet the kid, and then there's the fight, and there's a part about, you lied to me? And then they split up, and near the end, their reason they went from big city to small town comes back, so they go back to the big city, but then they don't go back to big city. Anyway, I just described like 300 different films.
Yeah.
and you don't remember any of those films, and yet
it's literally just cookie cutter.
Exactly, right? And those are all 5.5, 6 out of 10s. They're fun, but you don't remember any of them. Whereas, you know, when a woman comes out and says like, I just got results back from the doctors, I definitely have cancer.
Have breast cancer.
Yeah.
I got the results of the test back. I definitely have breast cancer.
And it's something that absurdity is memorable, and it's something that you can latch onto.
There's a lot of crossover between the bad but good movies and also the campy films. Like I have a hard time describing camp, but the best way I would describe it is it's sort of like B movies that don't take themselves too seriously, and they sort of like revel in that. And I think there's a lot of crossover between that sort of mentality and the bad but good movies, or they take themselves so seriously that it just backfires on them and it results in unintentional comedy.
That's a good way to divide it, because as I say, another film that I find that is in the same kind of category, but I think has a bit more kind of oomph to it, kind of juice to it, is like something like Hackers. Hackers is, I'd say it's a very well done film. It's just more so that the topic and the dialogue is it's so outdated, it's so cheesy in its own sense. It's kind of like you can't really judge them really, because that's just how it was. That's how they chose to do it, right?
I get it. It just has an aura of like, Hello, fellow kids.
We get you rebellious teens, and your pinball, and your pogs, and your Billy Idol. I love Billy Idol, but so anyway, thank you so much, George, for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Thank
as
you for
always.
having me on, Stephen.
I say this is average. This is normal. So I'll just.
This is a deep insight into what a 15-year friendship looks like.
Yeah. So I'll just throw it back to you, Steve, and I'll say thank you so much for your time, George. Thank you, Stephen, and thank you so much for your time, George. It's always such a pleasure to talk to you. That's all the time we have for Hammer D20. If you yourself would like to be featured on the show in some way, you can contact me through Cable 14's Be On TV service. All you got to do is go onto Cable 14's website, click on Be On TV, then appear on an existing show, and then let our producers know. And then fill out the form, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. I'd love to hear from you in some way, shape, or form, either if you've got an event coming up or something news kind of come in your life, or there's some news that's kind of related to nerddom in some way, or you're opening a new store, or even if you just want to discuss certain things like this discussion that I had with George. If you're open to that, if you'd like to come on, feel free to send me a message. You can also contact me through the Facebook page, or you can contact me through my Hotmail, which is available right here. svens@hotmail.ca. That's all the time we have for now. Hey, but people, thanks for watching. I'll see you soon.